Well, with all the doom and gloom of the past couple weeks, just bad news after bad news after bad rap that the American people have gotten, I wanted to do something positive here today to show you guys that there's a lot more that unites us in this country than divides us. There was a netizen by the name of thepixelstash who came to my comment and made some criticism. I wouldn't say that he is necessarily trying to fight me from a partisan perspective by any means. He was more talking about the idea that some leftist people, they like to virtue signal. Yeah, I mean, people on the left are certainly victims of that. But I went on to explain, my perspective and try and give a more nuanced perspective to him in the comments. And we did some more back and forth. And I tell you, I really appreciate the Pixel Stash for coming in and being civil. I think that's the metric that we can use for conversations moving forward. An example that was perfectly set that, yeah, the internet's a crazy place. A lot of crazy mother suckers out there. But Pixel Stash was very respectful and civil, even though he disagreed. I was able to explain to him my perspective and the perspective of many on the left when it came to Charlie Kirk's rhetoric. One of the things that he asked about was the articles that were related to these comments, try and get more context. I will, I guess, show each of them for a few seconds. If Pixel Stash has more clarity, if he wants the full clip played, any of that stuff, that article should hopefully help them with that. Now, this last article that talks about Kirk's comments on not being a fan of democracy, Pixel Stash didn't feel as hesitant about that comment because there is a academic argument that could be made that a government system based purely on majority vote, purely on a direct democracy, can have some unintended consequences, like a majority of bad actors, bad thinkers, whatever term you wish to apply, i.e., Nazi Germany, Russia, other places where, yes, technically speaking, democracy made the decision, but because there weren't enough checks and balances on the people's vote, which should have a decent amount of checks and balances like the judiciary or the executive or the legislative, the people sometimes need a check and balance on them too, that saying I'm not a fan of democracy kind of fits into that valid criticism. However, one thing I do want to make clear, the reason Charlie Kirk said that wasn't from an academic lens. He wasn't arguing it from a perspective of protecting minority citizens in this country. In fact, is the exact opposite perspective. He was trying to make the case that because the idea that we need to give a pathway to citizenship to immigrants, the fact that we have empathy towards poor and homeless people, the fact that we have a diversity of religions in this country that we have tolerance for, and of course, the First Amendment, we have freedom from religion in our government and freedom of practicing religion. He doesn't want those rules being applied to every single case. And because it's so popular here in the United States, these concepts, well, now suddenly he doesn't want to be a fan of democracy, and he thinks that those of you who go out and vote shouldn't be a fan of democracy either because it gives immigrants rights, it protects poor and homeless people, and protects religion beyond just Christianity. That's the context in which he's defending I'm not a fan of democracy. And sure, if you played a few more clips of Charlie Kirk, you could find him being in favor of democracy. You could find some other clips of him being a fan of certain immigrants and certain religions and so on and so forth. But that's what made Charlie Kirk so effective of a debater, was because he would just find controversial statements to make, throw them out there, and then let the majority of his conversations speak for themselves if ever he wanted to defend himself from criticism of the initial crazy, kooky comment. So, bottom line, as I've said multiple times, violence has no place in politics. We need to have a nonviolent, pacifist approach where we're having radical empathy for our other side. But we do have to honestly address how Charlie Kirk and TPUSA conducted themselves in the political sphere. And that's the only way that we're going to tone down the rhetoric and get all Americans to come together. We have to be honest about how we got here, both on the right and the left. So when it came to Charlie Kirk's comments about I'm not a fan of democracy, I'm not trying to dissuade you from having valid criticisms of that. I'm trying to illustrate to you that Charlie Kirk did not feel the same way about democracy that you may feel about it. Hope that helps.